Okay, now recording.
All right. And I'll just go ahead and run us through this and open up for questions as we go. My name is Connie Nguyen. I'm the Executive Director of the Racing Commission, and this is the Advisory Committee meeting for Rule Amendment OAR 462-120-0050. In attendance as part of this committee, we have Russell Fine, and please verbally say that you're here.
Here.
And we have he's from Gameplay Network, Andrew Silver from Churchill Downs.
Here.
And we have Leah Nelson from the Quarter Horse Association. You're on mute.
Here. I'm here.
Thank you. And we have William, wherever I do, I'm going to say your last name wrong, so I'm just going to say William from Amwest Entertainment.
I'm here. Thumbs up. Sorry,
Thumbs
no
up.
screen today, but yeah.
Okay, great. And we have Steve Smith representing our fair meets.
Here.
Great. And then we have, I'll let my staff introduce themselves after I get the commissioners. We have two commissioners who are here to be aware of everybody's feelings and concerns. Commissioner Barry, quick verbal here. You're making me dizzy. A quick here.
Here, present. Can you hear me? Sorry.
Yep, got it.
Oh,
And
good. Okay.
our chair, Margaret Doherty.
Here.
Okay, great. And Chris, you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, Chris Moncino, Chief Investigator with the Oregon Racing Commission.
Micah?
Michael Lloyd, Director of Mutual, Staff Member, ORC.
Right. Thank you. So just so everyone knows, this meeting is open to the public, but these are the individuals that we've named off who are actually part of this committee, and we'll be discussing these. At the end, because a lot of people are not represented on here because for some reason they didn't see the message or whatever the case is, I want to make sure that we have public comment so everyone can give us their comments. And then as part of our closing remarks, if we've learned anything new from the public comments, we'll go forward. Just to give you a little heads up on how this works is this is in advance of the rules even being filed. The purpose of this is to look at the framework that we've come up with, talk about why we came up with it, how we came up with it, and see if there's areas that we really need to make changes in before we even bring it to the commission for submission. You may want to know, why are we doing this? Well, there's a number of reasons. We haven't raised our fees for a very long time. $20 a year for a license is a really great deal, but it doesn't touch our expenses. Realistically, if you take into account all the time that it takes Chris and his team to manually do the processes that they're doing right now, and to do the background check, which is the manual process, and when they're doing it, to do fingerprinting, and the cost of the actual background check, the actual cost is closer to $125 per license. So us charging $60 for 3 years is putting us in a bad position. So we tried to do this as fairly inequitably as we could. We've spent a lot of time going back and forth. We're also in the process of getting a new database, which is a reason why this is so timely right now and so important, because our new database has to be configured correctly for these positions. And we have it into 5 tiers. I think the first thing I'm going to do is we're going to go through the tiers and discuss which one's which. I also want to show you some other licensing fees from some other areas. Some are higher and some are lower than our new proposals. we're changing to a 2-year license instead of a 3-year license. There's a couple reasons for that. Number one, some of our positions tend to be shorter. Sometimes ADW call center people, they're not necessarily going to stay for 3 years. Some of our groomsmen, not necessarily going to stay for 3 years. We always have some transient jockeys. They're probably not going to ever come back. So there's going to be a lot of positions that don't need a 3-year license. And since we are doing increases, we thought it'd be nice if we just went with a 2-year license. Let's see, I think that's it. Now, remember, after we're done with this meeting, it will next go to the commission in May. And then we start the official rulemaking process, and this won't conclude until sometime after the new fiscal year, because this is dependent on a statute that we have in, that's Senate Bill 853, which has not yet been heard in Ways and Means. That's what it's waiting for now. So until that's heard from Ways and Means, we don't even know if it'll go through. If it does not go through, the licenses will stay at the, well, the only option we have at that point is to change it to a 2-year license. And at that point, we could change it to $30 a year. But what you do need to know is that we currently have a rule in to change from a 3 to a 2-year license, regardless of this rule. So that means that because there's going to be a period of time possibly that the new license database will be up and the new fees have not yet been approved, there may be a period of a couple months where all licenses are going to be $40 because we won't be able to make all the changes. So there could be a discount period too. Chris, what's the maximum amount of time under the current database that somebody can renew?
So once the 3 years come up, they have a 30-day window to renew before expiration. Most people fully expire before they renew, but if they're trying to renew 31 days before, 32 days before, it won't let us do it in our system. So we have to, sometimes we'll get checks and we'll just have to hold on to that check until their 30-day window opens up.
Right. So that's something to think about too. So with that, I thought that it would be best to start by, there's a couple things that we did here. Let's start by looking at what some of the other jurisdictions charge. And then after that, I will, okay, so this is what that's the wrong one. Stop showing that one. This is what happens when you have too many monitors. Okay, so this is what we've been able to find that other jurisdictions are. Can you see that? Okay, I know sometimes on these computers it's hard to see. Oops, that's maybe a little too much.
It was fine. It was good. That's fine.
You can see it like that?
Yes.
So what you can see is Oregon's a 3-year license, so basically $20 a year. By statute, we cannot go up to more than $30 a year currently. The new bill we have would allow us to go up to $150 a year. Washington, theirs is a one. So an ADW employee, we currently charge $20 a year. They're charging $31 a year. California is charging $200, but it's for a 3-year period. Trainers, again, we're charging $20. Washington's charging $96. California's charging $150 a year. Or $50 a year, I'm sorry, $50. Grooms, same thing. Now, see, for the grooms here, this is a 1 year here and a 1 year here. So we're under even California is there. Jockey, same thing. Owner, same thing. And Washington also charges a fingerprint charge that we do not charge. Here's a few other positions that California has that Micah was able to pull up this morning. So that's $150 a year, apprentice $50 a year, driver $50 a year, assistant trainer $50 a year, and director of facilities $200 for a 3-year period. So based on some of the things that we have come up with might be a little high. We may want to adjust some of those up. Quinn. Commissioner Barry, I don't know why I'm calling you Quinn today.
Yeah, no, it's Thursday. That's perfect. My understanding is there's no reciprocity currently on these backgrounds between states. Is that correct?
We do
That is
have,
correct. We do have our own, we do run a background. So even if they ran a background check in California, Washington, then they still have to run one here. Because even if it's a couple of weeks, couple of months, anything can happen between when they got fingerprinted from one jurisdiction to another. So that's the reason why we all just do our own background checks.
except,
Sure.
Micah is going to explain
Yeah.
one.
We do have one carve out reciprocity for out of state ADW staff members
Yes.
who work in other states, and as long as they have licensing that meet our minimum requirements, including background checks and fingerprinting, that is permitted for out of state employees.
Right, and that's not for all out-of-state employees. That doesn't include their leadership team. Their leadership team still has to have Oregon licenses.
Right.
Okay,
I-
and one of the things that we did include in this is a free category, which we've never had. We've always had to kind of manipulate the system to do it. So we could technically license people who are in charge of the fair meets, for example. So we know who is going in and out of the tote room, and give them an official license for free. All right. So this is what we're seeing right now. Again, these tiers may be off. We may need to adjust them slightly down, but we can't go too far down. I think there's 5 tiers here. Well, and then there's the free one. All licenses for commissioners, commission staff, media personnel. I think we're required by law to give them free passes. Volunteers acting in an official capacity. Steve knows all those people. Any other role approved by the Oregon Racing Commission, we just put that in there as a safety net in case, something comes on. For example, a guest, if we license someone, there may be other options for that. Okay, and then I'm going to go over all these and then we'll come back and talk about each one of them. So the highest tier is tier 5. That's $125 per year. So these are 2-year licenses, so double these prices. So that's $250, and that would be for the senior manager of the online wagering and the senior person for the tote manager. That's one person at these companies. Okay. The second tier is what we call leadership and regulatory management roles. I want to mention that we have been talking to one of the associations, and we may not require a licensing fee for industry association managers in the future. We have always done that. We want to do some research on that to see if other jurisdictions are. But if we're finding that there's any other jurisdictions that are not charging that, we will stop charging that fee. They just can't go on the backside unless they have some kind of license. So these are the trainers, director of racing, track veterinarian, and industry association management are in tier 4. Tier 3 is the owners, assistant trainer, authorized agent, jockey, general manager, announcer, handicapper, horseshoer, racing secretary, online wagering employee. Tier 2, this is where we're really getting down a little bit. We wanted to make it a little bit easier, where some of these other places are charging a lot more for the jockeys. We think that most of the jockeys probably don't make that much money. Peg judge, payment, clerk of scales, horse identifier, outrider, vendor, clocker. And then tier 1, these are the ones that we thought probably needed the biggest break. So this fee would be $50 for a 2-year, which, if you look at that, is even lower than what Washington does for grooms or California. That would be low, still lower than all of them. Okay. So I think the best way for us to start is just start, since we have different people here, I would love to just hear to start with from the ADWs on the fees that we have for you. And for the ADWs, we're talking primarily about the your licenses as senior officials and your tote employees, for those of you that own totes. And
We have the category C, D, and E.
C, D, and E. C, D, and E. So who wants to go first? Andrew?
Sure. And thank you all for your time and for the invitation to folks to participate in the committee. Obviously, Churchill appreciates both the commissioners and the staff taking time to hear us out on this. I think the key difference for ADWs between ADWs and a lot of kind of on-site kind of racing type employees that has already been discussed is the idea that ADWs, although we have a hub in Oregon, our employees tend to be located outside of Oregon and licensed elsewhere already. So I think that provided that distinction remains in place, and in advance of this call, I spent some time looking at Rule 462-120-0010. That kind of it's the who must be licensed rule with the carve out that Micah referenced earlier. I think provided this draft rule and that rule are kind of harmonized with one another, and I may make some suggestions as to some additional text in both of those rules to ensure those two are in harmony before
Okay.
this is published.
Okay. We would love to see that.
Yeah, as if invited, I don't want to overstep, but
You're on the committee. That's why you're here.
okay. I'm not prepared to do that today, but if you don't mind me, if I can submit after, I'd like to do that.
Okay.
I think, ADW is obvious. We to me, not on behalf of Twin Spires or Churchill, but on behalf of just a matter of common sense, the last thing we want is ORC to be losing money on issuing licenses. So that makes good sense to us. Provided that obviously our employees who are licensed elsewhere, those licenses continue to be accepted as this carve out, because that would turn into an actual burden. Financially, if the scope of licensure was to expand to encompass those folks.
Absolutely.
It seems like that's what this does. I guess the one other note that I would make is that on the online wagering management, I think at one point you maybe said that applies to just one person. I think our experience is that maybe a handful of folks have had to be licensed. So I wonder if maybe this is an opportunity just for ORC to make clear who it believes from a management perspective needs to be licensed.
Right. Well, I think what our thoughts was, and maybe we need to identify that, is that whoever is in charge of the online wagering company have this license
Yeah.
down here, and every other member of the company is under here.
Yeah. And I guess I don't consider myself to be in charge, but I hold a license because I think that I've been swallowed up by that, which is totally fine and agreeable
Right,
to
by the
us.
leadership team.
Yes. Okay. So maybe this is an opportunity just to make, kind of make clear exactly what those two categories mean. So that, we're not inadvertently bringing more or less people within the scope of licensure. And
Sure.
and I can include that in, my suggestions as long as that's welcomed.
Right, yeah,
Um,
that sounds great. That's actually really helpful. Any other thoughts on any of this?
No, I mean, I don't want to overstep where I'm qualified to opine when it comes to kind of, owner, trader, jockey type personnel. I, certainly defer to the wisdom of the staff and commissioners on that, and those, local to the industry.
Okay. Thank you. And William,
Thank you. Yeah, and appreciate the opportunity. And yeah, it was good to hear about the, I believe you said tier one, but tier five only having one person. We're a smaller ADW, so um, any cost increase is really, really minimized. We're talking about a small amount of people at our ADW getting licensed. Any rate increases are difficult in this environment, but like Andrew said, um, appreciate that the ORC has had low fees for a long time and should not be losing money on the regulation or licensing side. So we're generally okay with what's proposed.
okay. And Russell.
Hi. Can I ask if I'm thinking of a person who is a player support person who might be taking a call from a player? Obviously, we're an ADW. That's probably the largest number of employees. What tier would they be under? Because I see tier 3 says online wagering employee, but does that include player support?
It does, but remember, if your player support are outside of Oregon and have a license that we approve, in other words, they do fingerprints, they don't have to have a license.
Yeah, I'm not sure off the top of my head. We have to license, I think, New York and California, if I'm not mistaken, for player support, but I'm not sure if that requires a fingerprint or not. I'm pretty confident we do a fingerprint with Oregon at this point. So I would
Yes.
have to check whether they would fall under this. What is the increase if it's $75 a year now? What is the prior rate for a player support person? Do you know?
The prior rate was $20 a year.
That's the only one that for us might be a little expensive, just because we have a large number and sometimes we need to increase temporarily, or at least we see that in the future. Player support, many of ours are not even in the country. So that's something I would just want to look at from our end, but I don't generally have a problem with the proposed rate structure. I would have one question, which is in anticipating the costs for the ORC to manage these licenses. If they are 2-year licenses, then you are relicensing. In other words, you're rerunning your process to KYC the employee every other year, essentially, when we renew, correct?
Well, we're making a change in that. We're not going to do the fingerprints again for 3 years or for 6 years now. So they relicense, they'll be able to do it online, which will save everybody a little bit of time. And they won't have to do that every single time. So just every 6 years.
Okay. For us right now, these rates would work. I would think in the future, if we really start to scale player support people, we might want to find a way for like a short term or a temporary overage or something like that. That might be a little bit less expensive, and maybe we limit the activities of the people who would be under that category. But we could talk about that at some other time if we scale the business as we hope we will.
Right.
For us,
So,
right now, this is fine.
okay. So if you have a proposal on what you think your customer support people, what that might look like as far as which category, if you think that the online is too high, we would like to get your feedback on that. Because right
Okay.
now it's $60, but that's not, I mean, tier 2 is $50 a year, that'd be $100. So that's still a $40 raise. And then tier 1 would actually be a discount, although it'd only be for 2 years.
Right. I'm wondering from a player support person perspective, having the same price as kind of a more managerial role, is that because they have access to PII? Is that the reasoning?
Yes.
Okay. Maybe having a role that we get approved to be in a lower tier where someone has less access or control, because we have people just picking up the phone answering questions that don't have to do a certain level of, don't have to have a high level of access or ability to impact a player's account. And that
Okay.
would be kind of more of our common run-of-the-mill player support person. So let us think about this, and we would propose something if we felt that was more appropriate. But for now, this is acceptable to us.
Okay. And again, you know, I mean, this is why we're having this meeting, to discuss this and say, you know, for the people, you know, in the management team, that's fine, but maybe we do a special carve out for these people and we put them where? And that's
And
a
if I
good,
could also mention that before we move on to other raised hands, in regards to that perhaps lower non-PII accessed role, it would put an additional onus on the annual audits to confirm and verify that type of access. Just want to make
Yeah,
sure
put
that's
that
part
down.
of the radar too.
Yeah, put that down on your tab.
Exactly.
Thank you for doing that for me in advance before I had to tell you. Commissioner Barry.
I don't know if any of the ADWs would feel comfortable commenting on this, but with artificial intelligence coming in, these sound like tasks that may get delegated to machines. I wonder if anyone would speak to whether that Russell had referenced potentially increasing the number of these folks. Is that the overall trend that industry partners expect, or are we expecting that AI is going to take over a lot of these roles? Because I feel like that would impact our decision making, and I don't want to make a decision based on, you know, where we're at today when it may change rapidly in the near future.
Okay. And we'll answer that, but first I want to hear what Andrew has to say, and maybe he even has some input on that.
I'm afraid to opine on AI, not because of discomfort from a professional perspective, but because I don't think I have anything intelligent to say about that one way or the other. But personally, my thoughts on that are still developing. So I think I just have to pass because I don't know what our plans are, candidly, as far as an AI customer support is. I do know that, you know, Churchill and Twin Spires is kind of hangs its hat on its human customer support and our call center in Lexington, and so I don't think there are any immediate plans to move on from that. But that's not why my hand was raised. I was just going to. There was reference to New York. I confirmed that our employees that hold licenses there are fingerprinted. I suspect that's the same across the board. I will note that the fee in New York is lesser, but I don't think that it's I don't know if that's relevant here one way or the other, because it sounds like by virtue of getting that New York license, that would help ADW employees qualify for the exemption. So I don't think it's worth arguing about the proposed fee. So that's all. I just wanted to try to shed some light on the New York question.
Okay. Next is Mike. I love the fact that it has numbers, so I know who raised their hand next.
Well, speaking as to New York, also want to remind everybody that I think they require two separate licenses, one for thoroughbred, one for harness. So you're actually, I think, having to pay twice for that. Is that not the case?
I think it's a $10 fee per license, and maybe you only pay once for fingerprints on top of that. And the fingerprints cover, I think, a 5-year time period.
Gotcha.
So I think on the net it comes out to be a little less, but again, I don't think that's worth
Yeah,
it's
that's it.
it's not worth making the comparison if ADW employees will be subject to this carve out by virtue of that license. So
And then second up, I want to speak it towards the AI aspect, and this was kind of brought up in our ADW committee meeting last week, or at least a touch point. As I'm seeing more and more, and I'm not going to mention any particular ADW, I'm seeing it being integrated into customer support solutions in more than one place, and there are some challenges there. It is I guess, a new component to the horse racing, and I'm seeing some challenges on acceptance by the end users. It's certainly in its infancy. It's going to be interesting to see where this goes over time, and hopefully lessen some of the complaints that I hear from the end users. That's all.
Russell.
Thank you. And I appreciate everybody being willing to entertain this. This is, boy, it's rapidly evolving for all of us. And so nobody knows where it's going, but I'm glad that we're involving it in our conversations, because it is something that appears it's going to be a part of our lives coming forward.
I was just going to say, first of all, thank you, Andrew, for pointing that out. If our New York licenses, which all of our, I believe, employees have to be New York licensed as well, qualifies, then that solves the problem for us economically. With respect to AI, for what it's worth, we are actively engaged in multiple AI-related projects, but I would say we don't, at this point, have any estimated time of delivering AI-related chat or support services to players. The reason being, right now, we don't feel that we have confidence that the AI responses will always be correct and not create liability accidentally for the company, because they subtly misunderstand and due to FTC and ORC and other regulatory environments. We're trying to be very cautious and perhaps let them down the road assist with things like technical connections, like why did my game stall? Why did this happen? But anything that's truly an ADW question, we're pretty reticent at this point to consider a time frame for that, given the liability potentially to the company.
Okay. All right. I think that's it from the ADWs. We are going to get some more information from Churchill Downs, and we're looking forward to that, so we can try and incorporate that, and maybe we'll move or change categories for somebody who is a support person. And we'll work on that. Okay, let's go to the hard stuff now. Let's talk about well, first we'll do the easy one. This is the fair meets. So for the fair meet, Steve, do you think 0 is okay?
Well, I think that all of your volunteers that we get that have access, I think, yeah, that should be a 0 fee. When you look at volunteers acting in your pari-mutuel, selling tickets, food and beverage vendors, yeah, that makes sense, that because they really don't have access to anything. The official one involves the outcome. I do agree that we have as we reduce that from 3 years down to 2, it gives Chris and his team more control over who has a license as far as doing background checks. But I agree on Tier F that those acting in no official capacity really shouldn't have a fee.
Right. And we don't even, a lot of those, like the vendors and such, we don't even require them to have a license. We would like to start requiring the people who are like in mutuals where they're handling money and stuff to have licenses. We just don't want to do it in a way that's going to cause any hardship financially for them.
Totally agree, Connie.
Okay. All right. Now let's start the hard part. Let's go over these categories. We've already talked about this category, so we can. Okay, Tier 4, trainer, director of racing, track, veterinarian, industry. And we have one industry person here. But if any of the ADWs have any experience with other jurisdictions, I'd love to hear from you. And otherwise, we may just open this up to comments really quickly. So let's start with Leah.
Well, I guess, and maybe I shouldn't admit this because I have been around for a very long time, but I didn't know that there was a required license for an industry association management. I've never had that license, and I've been doing my job with the Quarter Horse Association since 1991. I've had an owner's license for years because we have run quarter horses, and I currently have an owner's license.
In Oregon and California.
Yeah, well, actually, I have owner's licenses in Oregon and California, and and so $100 a year. I mean, if I'm doing an owner's license at $75 per year, so that's $150. Then I have to have an industry association management license, which would be $200. That puts me way over what you guys say the individual license not to exceed $150.
Right,
So,
and it will cap out. We won't charge you more than that. You cannot be charged more than 150 per year.
And then which license do I wear when I go to the track?
You'd still get all the licenses. They just we would stop charging you.
You're only talking about
Yeah.
30 days.
And you say that you have to have an owner's license or this industry association management in order to go to the backside?
It looks like we lost Steve and he's coming back in. Well, you have to have some type of license to get to the backside. I'm sure that's probably why they were requiring the associations. But we did look through our rules, and there is nothing in our rule that specifically says an association has to have a license. And I like your point. We only have 32 days of racing, so maybe we do need to knock these down. And how much do we knock them down by?
We go to the
Well,
5 times.
I don't know. You might, I don't know, you might put the tier 4 at maybe 75, but okay, so is there anyone besides the executive of the Quarter Horse Association, the executive of the HPPA, or the executive of the OTOBA? Is there anyone else that's considered an industry association management?
That's it.
Well, that's all I could think of, but I thought maybe, somebody knew something else. So, and see, I guess probably Linnell and probably Randy, although I think Randy Bodine did run a horse last year, so he may have had to have an owner's license, but so maybe it's appropriate for them, if they don't have any other license, to have that industry association management. But I don't know. It just kind of stuck in my craw as something that I couldn't see the reason for it, because you really don't have any control or any say in thing. I mean, well, I don't know. I guess we do have a say in the condition books, because the racing secretary sends the drafts to us.
I mean, you're pretty involved in the industry. You really do have a lot more power than you give yourself credit for. So we're going to do some research and look at the other. So we're going to take that under advisement that we may or may not keep that title, but we are going to check with other jurisdictions and see what they're doing, so we can try to be consistent and understand why they're doing what they're doing.
Okay,
if you find out,
I'm perfectly fine. I'm fine with that. That's fine. Yeah, I mean, like I said, I probably would be I would fall into the 2-year invalid, so I wouldn't pay the whole amount anyway, if you wanted to leave it at 100, but trainers are spending an awful lot of money getting to the track, bringing the horses, all the things that the trainer does to make all of these race meets go. And the director of racing, of course, they've got a lot of responsibility. So I don't know. I'm thinking that maybe the $75 in that category is a good number.
And again, we're going to talk to everybody else who's here too. What about this category? If this one's here, do you think this category should go down to $65?
The tier 3, you say?
Yeah, you're an owner, so this pertains to you for sure.
Yeah, I think 65 or yeah. But I wouldn't be totally opposed to 75 either. I mean, those I understand that, the commission has an expense in all of these, and so, but I would say either 65 or 75 would probably be
Let's keep
fine.
it there for right now till we hear from the public. And then
Yeah, I
here's
think there has been a lot of concern maybe for the $75 as far as all those categories. And of course, mostly it's going to be
here.
Well, let's see. I guess it's probably in the owner category. But that's just because owners pay so much already.
So assistant trainers, they're not making a lot of money. None of these people are making a ton of money. So maybe we do go back down to 65.
Well, that's the assistant trainer, isn't it? Your trainer
Yeah.
is in
In
the
$75,
$100 category.
which we're tentatively saying 75 now.
Right.
So let's just put this at 65 right now. And then how about this, tier 2? This is your jockey, chaplain, paddock judge, pace master.
I would say to keep that at $50 a year.
The jockey.
Would there be any interest in putting the jockey in a 1-year category? Just because, as what you spoke in the beginning was that, they're not always here for 2 years.
I'm not sure that we can do that with our system is a problem. And even if we put them in a 1-year category, I mean, it's going to cost us more than $25 to just fingerprint them and do the background check, not even counting the cost of everything else. So I don't think we can go less than 2 years if we're running background checks and everything. But that's a good question. I like it. Okay, and then what about, we thought these were the positions, and we thought about maybe putting the jockey in this lower position. So it's only $50 for them for 2 years. We ended up moving them back up here. Do you think we should put the jockeys in the lowest tier?
I don't know why not. I mean, you've got the apprentice jockey there.
Right. Well, because they're just starting.
So why not? And when you say food and beverage employee, are you talking about if there is somebody, like, let's take Grants Pass, for instance, when there is the company, whoever they are, that has that food place that's in the, underneath the grandstand.
Yes.
And you also have
Corn guy.
the hamburger guy that's out in his truck thing. So are those the kind of people, or do they have to be employees of the track?
If they are a permanent fixture at the track, they're there all the time, they need to be licensed. So, and that's why, you know, the guy who does the hamburgers also does a kitchen, right, on the backside.
Right. Yes, I think.
But I
that's
don't
correct.
think the
Yes.
people who are, I don't think the people who are doing like the windmill things, I don't think we need to be licensing them. They're more free
what about-
entertainment than anything else.
What about the man that sells the caramel corn at Grants Pass?
That's where you start
Does
to
he
get
have
on
to
the
be-
edge. Yeah, that's more like, to me, they're never going on the backside. They don't have a permanent fixture there. I think I can go, I think we're fine not licensing them. It's when they're actually using the structure that, yeah, other tracks, they'd probably make everybody be licensed, but I don't think we have to go that far.
Right.
Okay?
Mhm.
All right. I think now is a good time to talk about, to open up to the general public and get their opinions on these. So,
Steve Smith has his hand raised.
oh, I'm sorry, Steve. Hi, Steve.
That's fine. Chris, what is the cost of our average cost of our background checks?
So the background check costs the same for everybody. Doesn't matter. Let me find my email. I want to say it was
Like $50.
$45.
It's
Okay.
it's a little more than that. It's closer to 50.
Yeah,
But
it's like
that-
49 something or 48 something. It's like some oddball number, not really
Yeah.
an even
And-
number.
And that doesn't include the time for them to do the fingerprints, for our staff to do the fingerprints, to do, there's a lot of back and forth on these, on, hey, we still need this document, we need that document. So they end up spending a lot of time doing this, including the background check. It's just not like automatic. He has to put all the information, he has to take all the information from the database and put it into the licensing system, then go back and check it. So it ends up, even if we automate it, it's still going to be a lot of manual processes for them.
I just know as an owner and ran in many jurisdictions and held a racing compact out of Kentucky, that most of your licenses were a year as an owner, and they range anywhere from, Oregon was always one of the lowest priced ones. Some of them were as high as $200 a year for a license. And it was tough to try to get fingerprints and things around to different states as you ran horses. And so that's why I bought the compact, because most of the states accepted those fingerprints. But again, as you get into this, I think it's one thing to say we only run 32 days in Oregon. I think it's another thing to say all the security or the investigators' time it takes in order to do these things. Again, I think that's the judge of what our license fees have to do. They have to track that cost. As it increases, your license fee should increase along with it.
Good comments. Can we turn it over to those that are here from the community who want to talk about this and give their opinions? Rod,
You just come.
I know you have a whole bunch of these people. Oh, yeah, you have your hand up. There we go. You're on mute.
I want to first start with fingerprinting. So I want to clear up the fingerprint issue. Are we fingerprinting everybody that's getting a license?
We are going to start, they started last year doing everybody, and they do it, they can do it in-house. So there's two ways to do it. You can either go someplace and get fingerprints, or they can use the electronic scanner to do their fingerprints.
Okay.
Yeah, so anybody that has access to the backside will need to required to be fingerprinted. And then anybody that has access to PII, as on the ADW side or the online wagering, they need to be fingerprinted. So yeah.
So every one of these categories we're talking about going forward or starting last year has to be fingerprinted one way or another. Is that correct?
Correct. And those fingerprints will be good for 6 years. They won't need to be fingerprinted until their third renewal. I think that's how it boils down to. Every third renewal.
Okay. Yeah. So obviously, if people are doing stuff online, they can't do that, right? They have to go independently and go get fingerprinted by somebody that's going to charge them X amount of dollars to do that.
Correct. So the ADWs, some of the ADWs have their own in-house fingerprinting. They have like their own cards and they send it to us in the mail. Other people, they could go to the local sheriff's office or police department. I believe they do. I think in Jackson County, I think the sheriff does it for like $12 or something like that. I don't remember the actual price, but it wasn't astronomical by any means. But I mean, there was a small financial cost to it.
And if they're,
And if they're in the area, they could just make an appointment with us and we could do it for free with the digital one. They just have to come to our office.
Okay.
So for example, if you're a trainer, you can do everything online before you get there and then show up and they'll just do your fingerprints.
Yeah, I'm looking at the burden of going someplace, getting a fingerprint, another cost involved in that to do all of that. So I just want to clarify it because I think you're going to get some pushback from people that, I'm going to have to send every one of my staff people now to be fingerprinted, all tellers, and they change from year to year. And, so it's a whole nother layer that's being done. That's going to be an adjustment. So I just wanted to clarify that.
Well, the good news is, like your tellers and such, they can come in during the week and do fingerprints. It's if you have a special session where you want to do it, even if you haven't started, if they have training, Chris could come in and just have a fingerprint day.
Okay.
Or maybe if you have a whole bunch of tellers, Chris could bring the equipment up to the teller room.
Now, are we doing that because we just want another layer of security? Because we've always just done background checks. So I'm just asking why we've added that because of other states. What's the reasoning for it?
The reasoning, at least, well, it's in the rule that we have the authority to fingerprint any licensee. We just started doing it recently because mainly when I got there, there's no fingerprinting really being done at the track. We're requiring them for ADWs and everybody else, but we weren't requiring them for the track. So I made that change. If it's going to be for one person, it's going to be for everybody. It's not just because some guy lives in New Jersey and he has to get licensed through us and he has to send fingerprints and no one at our track is getting fingerprinted. Everybody travels state to state. Our access to the background check is only restricted to our background check is restricted to Oregon. So when I pull fingerprints, I could pull from the entire country. Where if they have a crime in California, Washington, Kentucky, or something like that, I won't see it if I only do an Oregon run because that's all I have. That's all I'm able to do. But with the fingerprints, I'm able to get the whole country and see everything.
And that really is a big part of it, Rod, is it was supposed to be, the way I understood it, is if the person had always lived in Oregon, they wouldn't require fingerprints. But then it started to get more and more where they just weren't doing fingerprints at all. And when we talked about it, we started looking at how many of these people had spent at least some of the year out of state. And most, it seemed like at the time, the majority were coming in from out of state or spent some time out of state. in races someplace else. So that had a lot to do with it too.
Okay, all right. I appreciate that clarification. I wasn't aware that we went to fingerprinting, and so it was just something that I needed to understand so I can explain to other people as it comes up, because I think it's going to be questioned in the future. So,
And to be clear, we want to make this as easy as possible and provide as much customer service as we can. So any way that we can help on this, for any events, we want to do that. We can show up early for fair meets. We can do whatever we need to make sure that we're providing the best possible experience we can under the circumstances, while also helping to make sure that, you don't have somebody in there that just committed armed robbery last week that you didn't know about. And they're holding thousands of dollars of cash. So it's for your protection as much as it is everybody else's.
okay. All right, so let's go to the tier for ownership.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's see, owners. Okay.
So ownership, tier 3. You have it at 75, a proposal maybe to lower it to 65. I don't know where I couldn't read the schedule of what the other regulations are, other states are doing. However, I did just renew last year my California license. It was for 3 years.
For 150.
And it was $150.
Yeah.
So I don't see how we could even go to 65. My opinion is that tier, if you're going to try to do other states, it should be $50. That would be the same as California license, which I can run at tracks, maybe not now, but well, I could. If I ran at Los Al, for instance, I could run year-round racing down there for $150 for 3 year.
Washington is 96 a year.
Well,
So
Washington,
I'm going to go ahead and put it down here, but just so you know, it's way below what Washington is.
Yeah, but it's.
And if I can also interject here, my conversation with
California is. So
I had a conversation with the California Racing Board this morning about these fees, and they said that these are the current ones, and they are currently changing them also.
Did they say to what?
They're not going down. They're not going down.
They did not say to what, and it's, but they're saying that the same as us, they've got stuff in legislation to increase them.
Okay. All right. So that was my comment on that. My other comment is on people that are coming to supply things at the racetrack. In the past, I don't know where they fit into. So just for instance, my hay supplier.
We don't need your hay supplier to have a license. That's somebody who's dropping.
You have in the past, so I want to see, because
Chris, so if they're just dropping off supplies, they don't have to have a license. They need to be escorted.
Yeah, they need to be escorted, and they just need to be in the backside for that purpose only. They can't lollygag around and sit there and chit chat and turn off their vehicle and kick back with the people. I mean, they're there to conduct business and get out.
Yeah, where we need like vendors that we have here to be licensed. Well, I don't even know where it is right now. But for the vendors, if you're wondering about that, those are going to be people who are there for a longer period of time, or like our IT people, we set them up as vendors because they could come in periodically here and there. So they're routinely there. They have to come on a regular basis. They're actually doing work at the track. Those are the type of people that we need to have a vendor license. If it's not a one-off dropping off sand, You know, I don't want somebody who's dropping off a load of sand to have to get a license.
Okay, I appreciate clarifying that because in the past, it has been an issue and I
Yeah,
had people that were mad and I ended up paying for their license just because they weren't gonna come and supply anything anymore by just having.
how about we put something in the rule? So for the future, if Chris decides next year he's gonna dump me and go off someplace, the new person, it'll be very clear to them that vendors, we just need, and Mike, I'm sure, is already thinking of exactly what this language might be because he loves this stuff. That clarifies the difference between somebody who's dropping off hay and somebody who is, so I mean, if your person's dropping off hay every single week, maybe we get them this license, any other row approved by the racing commission. And that's a free license. Then they don't have to worry about it. So they can come in and out easily. And we don't have to have, if they're coming in, I mean, the sand person's only coming in once or twice a year. But the hay person might be coming in a couple times a week. So that might be a good one to put under this role. Would that work?
Yeah, just, yeah, some kind of clarification of who has to get one and how often they have to be there to fall into that category, I guess.
Okay, that's helpful. See, we're getting all kinds of good things here. All right, what else?
That's all I have. That I think, you know, the rest of it, what's been discussed is fine. So.
And who else do we have on there? Melissa, I'm not sure where you're from. Do you have any comments on this?
Sorry, I'm here for David Ehrman on behalf of FanDuel. I know it looks okay to me. But again, I'm taking notes and I have to talk with him and he has more to say than I do.
Sure, that's great. And you heard the part where, you know, for FanDuel, we need at least, you got to have somebody in Oregon at all times, as you know, and they have to have a license.
Yes.
And your leadership team has to have a license. But other than that, this shouldn't really impact FanDuel very much. See who else we have. Linnell. Oh, wait, Leah, you're part of the committee. Sorry.
Well, I just had one quick comment that I wanted to remind people. I have people from Idaho and Utah and California that are like entering our firecracker fraternity. And if they need to come in ahead of time, and you know, some of them, probably all of them, are going to need a license. And so I would need to have some information to give them to say, you know, you need to come a day or 2 days or 3 days ahead, or something like that, because we could end up in a problem of timing and not having the proper license before they run and that kind of thing. So,
and that's always been the case. But one thing that'll be nice, Leah, is when we start this new database, we're hoping to start before the season, but we might not, is they'll be able to go in and input everything and get here. And then all they have to do once they get on site is the fingerprints.
okay, yeah.
Because currently the way that we're doing it is extremely time. Half the people don't even fill out the application. They just sit in the chair next to Mike or Chris and they have to type it in. You know, what's your name? What's your date of birth? And the other problem is sometimes there's spelling errors because people spell their names different. And they just assume Michael is spelled like most Michaels, and it's not. So it's not good for us for the data entry either. So if they do it themselves, they're much more likely to get it right. Some people aren't going to want to do it because they don't want to deal with a computer, and that's fine. We can do it for them. And if they can't do it themselves, they don't feel comfortable on a computer, they can call in advance and we can enter all that stuff in for them. They don't have to wait till the last minute. So one of the
Okay.
things that we're working on we have a steering committee for our new database, is we're working on a communication plan to get you materials in your hands that you can distribute to people to tell them exactly what this process would be like.
That'd be really good. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
I
No.
I-
I
Do you
think
wanna
Rod's
make a
covered
comment?
it.
I think Dave wanted to make a comment as part of the public comment.
hey, Dave, give me your public comment.
Hi. Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now.
Okay. My comment is just general blather, I suppose, and it comes down that these categories are the license fees were established back when Portland Meadows and MKC and the State Fair and all of those were running, and there were probably in the neighborhood of 100 racing days, and now we're down to 30 racing days. And it may be, we've always had a problem of getting jockeys at Grants Pass and at some of the other fair meets. And I think the commission, we're coming to a point where there's going to be a collision between what are we buying with our $100 or our $25 or our $50 or whatever. Are we buying something of value or are we just paying for the privilege of doing it? We know the commission needs to have the funds to operate and to pay the costs of what they're doing. But the owner, who is always billed by the trainer and always billed by the jockey, and if I fly a jock up from Los Al to run in the trials, that's $600 or whatever it is for a plane ride up to Medford and then back that afternoon, and then $50, and it just keeps piling on. And there comes a point where you'd rather buy a boat than a racehorse. So I just put that out for the commission to consider. At some point, those lines intersect. And in Southern California, for example, and I'm on the Pacific Coast California Racing Board for Los Alamitos and other fair meets for quarter horse racing. And at some point, in the old days, there was probably a dozen breeders in Southern California. Now there's two, maybe three, and that are breeding horses, and they're shorter horses at all venues in California. First time I saw a 6-horse field at Del Mar, and so on. But anyway, the point is that it's expensive for the owner. Our owners are not like California owners. California owners are former hedge fund owners. Now they're racehorse owners, same similar kind of deal. But now here we've got our membership is mostly Hispanics, and they don't have a lot of money. But at some point the lines cross where it's not worth paying the additional money.
Well, we did move
That's the
them.
end of my comment.
Yeah, and we did move them down to tier 2, and the jockey license is only for 2 years, but it went from $60 down to $50. So if they're only coming up for one race, at least it's cheaper than it used to be.
Well, the only thing that I would say on that, it might be an opportunity where to reevaluate the positioning of a number of the categories in different categories. If we only have 2 riders at Grants Pass, we don't have much of a race meet.
Yeah, but no, what's your point?
Yeah, well, the riders, that's why we have them at $25 per year.
Yeah.
Already reduced that.
Well, I thought, and I'm not, like I said, I'm not trying to throw
No,
rocks into your.
I'm
into your
asking, so what I need, what would be really helpful from all of you, and remember, this will go through a public process. What I need is for you guys to look at these positions and say, that one's wrong, it should be here. Which ones do you think are wrong so we can put them in the right place? That's what this committee is all about, is to start that process before we even move it to the next level. And this has been really good feedback. For example, who all has to be licensed at the racetrack? Who all has to be, who has to have an online wagering management account compared to, somebody who's just answering the phones? So any feedback you have,
Could you go even a little more exploratory and have like the Fish and Wildlife Commission? You have a 1-day license.
I don't know if our database.
I bought a
would-
Except the
one-day
Fish and
license,
Wildlife
fishing.
are just giving it a license to go do stuff. We have to do background checks. We have to do a lot of work that has out of money, that has costs involved.
Yeah.
Yeah, how many I guess just for conversation, how many background checks have been done at the fraternity in Grants Pass, where the guy flies in that day and flies out that night? He's there for a grand total of
Yeah, but
6 hours.
Well, if he
I got
flew
my
in and he got
fingerprints.
fingerprinted that day, because we had the electronic fingerprint system. So,
Okay.
anybody that came
I
in
got
last
my
year got
fingerprints in
fingerprinted.
1972. Okay, that's all I have to comment on.
Well, I guess I could put it another way. I've got staff at varying ages and abilities back there. I've got some very young staff and some very senior staff. And I don't want to think that there's any mass murders on the backside that I have to worry about. I don't want to have to be concerned that we've got people who have committed robbery there in the test barn. I don't, or in the mutuals room, and I'm sure Rod doesn't either. I don't want to have to worry that I have somebody that's been charged of animal neglect that's a veterinarian. So that's my thing, is I have a responsibility to make sure that we've got the right people at this track. So when Chris made the decision, I fully support him on that. I know it's different. If we need to get a second fingerprint machine to make it quicker, we'll do it. If we need to make a trip out to, heck, if you need us to make a trip out to ADW, we'll go out and do fingerprints. We'll do whatever we have to try to make this as easy on you as possible. But we do need to make sure, and the world is a crazy place. I had one of the people that I was going to hire to work for us, that my staff really wanted me to hire. I had a bad feeling about. It turns out she just got out of jail for arson. I don't think we want that in a test barn. So, so sometimes these things are good, and I understand change is never fun, but help me to make this easier on you. Help me to come up with crazy ideas that are going to help you, and that way I can, don't nothing's off the table is what I'm saying. If it's going to be difficult because all your staff need to be fingerprinted, tell me how we can get to them and get that done. And we're going to bend over backward to try to help you out with that. And these categories, the same thing. This is the first step. But if you guys see things in these categories and you think about it, let us know so we can put them in the right place. The idea isn't to break anybody, it's to try to make sure we're covering our costs. And like some of these, like the chaplain, I don't know, maybe the chaplain, I don't know if the chaplain is paid or a volunteer. If the chaplain is paid, maybe that's fine. If it's a volunteer, maybe we should make it free. But I need your feedback on that. So what I'm going to ask is, as my closing remarks, is I think that this was a good first meeting. I think we got some really, really good feedback, especially on maybe we need another category from Russell Fine, and I'm looking forward to seeing the input from Churchill Downs. but that we need to keep working on this so we get it to be as fair as possible and not a hardship for anybody if we possibly can. William.
Yeah, thanks, Connie. I appreciate all this dialogue. It's amazing. I've shared my perspective as an ADW operator, but as a member of this committee and someone who's worked in the industry for about 25 years now, holding various positions on the front side and also representing the horsemen and women in New York, licensing is a major issue. It sounds like you all are doing it really right with low fees. But licensing has generally been developed to keep bad actors out of the sport. Protecting the integrity of the sport is very important, and us telling the public that it's safe and there's a lot of integrity is really important, especially since wagering is being conducted. So we needed the public to have faith that all of the races were on the up and up. But the world has really, really changed. And I know that sounds very cliche, but right now people are betting billions of dollars on sports events that are happening in America, and not a single one of those people are licensed. I know the Oregon Racing Commission does not regulate sports betting, but I spent the previous 4 years of my professional career representing the horsemen in New York, and the New York State Gaming Commission required, all sorts of people to be licensed by the New York State Gaming Commission to protect the integrity of the sport. And, a multiplier of 10 was being bet on sporting events where nobody was being licensed by the New York State Gaming Commission. I'm hopefully not trying to, transpose my comments of a frustrating time in New York onto Oregon, because it's not the same. But I would just say, as a committee member, that I would ask the Oregon Racing Commission to evaluate, either during this process or during the next process, why are we licensing people and who are we licensing? What's the reason for it other than we've always done it? Or conversely, the background checks, we're treating everyone the same. Is there a need to do a background check on everyone? Again, if it's because of the integrity and, because gambling is going on this, I think we just need to look at more popular industries and see that it's not being done and people are still wagering with confidence on it. If there's another reason that I'm not aware of, so be it. And these fees are really low. So I don't want my comments to come as a criticism, because it's amazing, all things considered. But just going forward, I think we should be considering what is the purpose of licensure. From the ADW side, PII, totally get it. But like a track photographer, a chaplain, these people have no way of impacting the running of a race. Same thing with a food and beverage manager. And our sport's in a very difficult position. And sorry for being so long-winded. The ORC is very friendly to horse owners compared to New York, for sure. I'm chuckling now. I have a lot of stories to share. But I think we should be making it as simple and easy as possible to enter this sport, this game that we love, because people aren't voluntarily doing that on their own. I'm not advocating for $0 owner fees, but it should be considered. We're short of owners, and like any barrier to entering our sport should try to be reduced at this juncture. So yeah. I just wanted to share that before the call ended. Nothing really to act on, but it's a thought of mine, and I'm glad to share it and help as best I can.
Okay, what do other people think about that? Any other comments on that? The reason I'm highlighting these blue is all these people have access to the back. Food and beverage, in most cases, they don't have access to the back. Any other thoughts on that? Rod, what do you think about William's comments?
I think there's some validity to that. I agree with your comment also that anybody that has access to the back, like I'm thinking, I just started thinking about, yes, the chaplain has access to the back. Do I think the chaplain would ever do anything? Of course not.
Yeah, me too.
And
but I'm Catholic, so we've had a lot of priest problems.
Yeah. So I think there's some validity to that, and I would have to go through these, lists to come up with, what William's talking about. I think there are some, like the food and beverage manager. Obviously, Tom on the backside that's there all the time, yes. The food and beverage managers on the front side, no. So I agree with some of that. I think you'd have to go through each one of these and really look at that. But I agree with you, Connie. Anybody that has access to the back, good or bad, only because they have access to horses and so on and so forth. And there's an issue always with testing and transfer of meds just through touch and stuff. And everybody loves to go pet a horse, so I think there's some issues with people going onto the backside. I agree that they all, except for, like I talked about earlier, the vendors that are just showing up once in a while to deliver something. I agree that the backside is a secure area and those people should be vetted.
Okay, good comments. If you'll do me a favor, when you have a chance, if you can send me an email in the next week or so on your thoughts, Rod, about those positions, I'd love to see it.
Sure, absolutely.
And of course, anybody can send me Leah.
I just have I have a question, and maybe my question is to Rod. On the tier 2, on the paymaster of purses and the claims clerk, are they one and the same here in Oregon? I mean, I know your big tracks, they're probably not, but
No.
if you're going to claim a horse, do you turn your claim into the paymaster?
Well, the paymaster takes the money, but no, the claim goes to a claim box, and that is pulled out by the clerk of scales normally, and then handled by the stewards.
Oh, okay. So I
we
guess
don't
you
even
need
really-
both of those categories.
You may not even have a claims clerk, is what we're saying.
We-
That's done by a different place here.
Yeah, we don't have a specific claims clerk, no.
Well, that's what I was thinking, that there wasn't one. That I can see it in a big track, where you'd need that, but so
Right, and we
I
need
don't
to
know.
have this set up in case we grow. I mean, we want to assume that one day we could be a grown-up track and have lots of races every single day.
Yeah,
So the infrastructure is already there, but that doesn't mean that you have to have one.
sure.
Right.
All right.
Yeah, okay.
Any final, Chair Doherty, do you have any comments on this? Otherwise, I think we're just about done.
No, I just appreciate everybody's input. It'll help.
Okay. With the good of the order, I think this meeting is over. Have a great day, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.
I don't know if it gets so painful.